share something with you. In 1979, when the Shah was brought to the United States, I was with a group of young, mostly young radicals at that time, much younger than we are today, by the way, who staged a pretty big protest demanding that the Shah be returned. And we had a couple thousand people, not huge, not tens of thousands, but a couple thousand in New York City. And then I was actually asked by this group to go to San Antonio, Texas, where the Shah had been taken. He was at Lackland Air Force Base. So I went to San Antonio with the assignment to organize a national demonstration in San Antonio, Texas, a place where I don't think there ever has been a national demonstration, demanding that the righteous plea and demand of the Iranian people for this war criminal to be returned to face justice, that the U.S. return him, and that would be the solution to the U.S. embassy crisis in Tehran. So we went to San Antonio, Texas. I rented an apartment there. We started organizing, and it was so brutal. I can't tell you how brutal it was. The Iranian students, some of whom were part of the ISA, the Iranian Student Association, others associated with more religious affiliated groups, they were doing sit-down or sit-ins and hunger strikes. They were beaten. They were tormented. The KKK came out and organized mass protests against our efforts to organize a demand calling for the Shah to be returned. It became a huge deal in Texas. And then, of course, the Shah was sick, and they sent him out of Texas and sent him to Panama, I believe. I mean, the sort of the heat was on. But the thing that was most noteworthy, and the reason I want to mention it, not just to take a walk down memory lane, is that in a way it was this, I felt it was the end of the 60s. You know, even though it was much later than the 60s, it was 1979, but we were all surprised. Those of us who had been anti-Vietnam War protest activists and organizers, we had the American people more or less with us by 1970. And so when U.S. imperialism was carrying out this next egregious act, bringing the Shah to the United States, we thought, because we were young and naive, we thought, yeah, the American people will react as they did during Vietnam. They'll sort of see through their government's imperial policy. And we couldn't have been more wrong. The political atmosphere shifted so dramatically. And even the idea that Ronald Reagan, who we considered to be a right-wing extremist, could become president, that seemed outlandish in 1976. Matter of fact, I went to an embassy here in New York City, and one of the foreign diplomats said, "Who do you think will be president of the United States next?" And I said, whoever I said, and he said, "We think it'll be Ronald Reagan." And I laughed and I said, "Oh no, Ronald Reagan could never be president of the United States. He's too far right-wing." But under the pressure of what happened in 1979, indeed, Ronald Reagan with his ultra-right program came into office, and the entire American foreign policy, which had been on its heels, reeling from the defeat in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia, and, coupled with the losses of, the Afghan Revolution in 1979, or the Nicaraguan Revolution in 1979, or the Ur Revolution in Iran, they became ultra aggressive, and everything sort of shifted. Al Haig came in and said, "We're going to stop the communist winning streak," because anybody who had a revolution was undoubtedly motivated by communism, because that was the dominant narrative. Anyway, I just want to, I think it's so important what you were saying, because this was in many ways a turning point. 79 was, of course, a turning point for the people of Iran, but it was a turning point for public consciousness in the United States, because the government successfully demonized Iran to such a high degree that it sort of gave a new lifeline to right-wing political forces in America. Anyway, again, I'm taking a little bit too much time, but I think it's kind of an important moment in not just your history, but global history.